season 2 of Meet the Toberts. We're excited to be here with you today. And our podcast is about thriving in and out of medicine, no matter where you are in your career, in your training. And together, Daren and I come with a combined experience of over 80 years practicing in medicine. I know that makes us sound ancient. I'm Sue Tobert. I am a pediatric cardiologist by training and a certified physician development coach in my spare time. I'm also recently retired.
And I'm Daren Tobert. I am a sleep medicine physician who's getting really close to retirement, like in a couple of days here as we record this. And I previously practiced pulmonary and critical care medicine. And I really enjoy personal finance. That's been a thing for me over the years. And I've actually just recently completed a master's degree in blockchain and digital currency. So I have a strong financial interest.
Yeah. And we're a Gen X medical couple. We grew up in Canada in the 70s and 80s. We enjoyed and survived busy medical practices, experienced some burnout, came out on the other side. And here we are retiring early, which has been a dream of ours for years. And we hope to share some insights and wisdom we've gained through our experiences during our career. And this season, we're going to focus on topics that really help you create a better future for yourself.
So today's episode is about financial planning advice. This has been something that we have experienced over the years, I would say, with our careers coming of age and actually earning money starting in the mid 1980s and who to go to for advice about how to manage money. Why, I think, is an important topic. Why seek advice? Versus DIY, completely do-it-yourself approach. When should one go to seek advice? Do you have to have a lot of money before you go see a financial planner? And who should you go to? Boy, we've had some experiences with that over the years. Hey, Sue?
Yeah, we have.
We've been to everybody from a life insurance agent, through the more traditional now AUM, assets under management type advisors, to today where we're mostly DIY, but we do still have help with our financial planning. So our friend today is Bryce Lorenz. Bryce is a certified financial planner and financial advisor with New Retirement Advisors, and they can be found through newretirement.com. He has a master's in business administration and is a fellow of the Healthcare Financial Management Association. So Bryce, welcome to the show. Please share a little bit about your background and interest in financial planning and your background in healthcare too. I think it probably gives you a special insight into the issues of physicians. So what led you to do what you do today?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Daren. Great to be with you and Sue. Yeah, I started out my early career in the healthcare industry on the finance side. So I have worked with a lot of a lot of medical professionals. I wanted to understand really what they did and all those things. It was really a fun experience. I even got to experience an open heart surgery right by a couple of physicians, and it was really kind of an exciting time. But as I went through the healthcare years, I really wanted to help people directly with their finances. And so I did take the certified financial planner exam, passed, and got into the industry. And I have been loving it ever since. And so it's just a really great thing. I love finance and I love helping people. And I just felt like it was really a great intersection of the two things. And so I plan to do this for really forever. I help people on a pro bono basis that can't afford a CFP as well. And so it's just something I like to do. Not very good with the hard work, so I'd rather help you with your money.
Yeah,
That's
fair
awesome.
enough. One question I got to ask you, though, is how did you get through the open heart surgery? Did you get a little weak in the knees or have to sit?
You know what? I thought before it was happening that I would probably just faint, but I didn't. And it was actually very interesting. I was actually standing right at the head of the patient, and there were two physicians right on either side of me, and they were talking just, normal talk. And one of them said something like, yeah, this is just like at home in your garage. And I'm thinking, Not in my garage.
Maybe if you're a deer hunter or something like that. Yeah.
True. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Well,
very good.
speaking of weak in the knees, that's how I sometimes feel about finances and budgeting. And Bruce, you know this about us. Like Daren invites me to the family budget meeting like once a month, and I can probably show up and my brain will last in that for like, I don't know what, honey, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I'm checking out 5 minutes. Okay. I try my hardest. But what comes to mind, just tapping your expertise, is that I think physicians are kind of a really unique and challenging group of like these highly trained individuals to work with. Certainly we need the financial education, yet we kind of come with this, we're already professional and kind of know it all. And maybe we don't feel even comfortable asking financial planning questions. And we're just curious, like, what general advice do you have for those maybe early in their medical career and in training around paying attention to this important topic?
Yeah, great question. When I think about kind of the beginning or the basis of what physicians and others really should know is really looking back to healthcare. And one of the colleagues that I had that was in the quality assurance area, quality management, she talked about a triangle. And so at the base of the triangle in a hospital, what is that? We're taking care of patients, right? I mean, that's our real job. And so the base of the triangle is patient safety. If we don't have patient safety, it doesn't matter how many great, what kind of equipment we have, all the fanciest, x-ray equipment, et cetera, all the great, supplies, all the great processes. If we don't keep patients safe, the rest of it doesn't really matter. And so we think about financial planning and kind of the finance side, the base of the triangle, we got to make sure we have all those basic things in place first. Make sure we have all of our assets insured properly, right? Home, if we have a home, if we have a car, obviously things like liability, right? As a physician, you want to make sure your professional liability is taken care of a lot of times probably by your employer, but you want to make sure you understand it, that you understand the coverage and make sure there's no gaps in what you think is necessary. And you are your most important asset to start with, right? And so disability insurance. And then what type of disability insurance is going to make sure that you're covered and you're protected for yourself. And if you have a family, that it's going to cover them. That own occupation designation for disability is going to be important. And so those basic triangle kind of pieces at the bottom are important. Then you can start thinking about, hey, what do I do with investing or saving? Prioritize my debt. I'm going to have potentially some student loans, kind of prioritizing how that fits into things. And then just really then taking that next step of maybe getting the help from a third party, such as, a financial planner.
Sure. So, yeah, I think disability insurance as an important base of the triangle is a super important point to make. So even for young physicians, once you've got a couple of years dropped into medical school and you're looking at, serious debt already, if something happens to you and you can't finish medical school, now you got a real problem, right? So seeking disability insurance very early on, obviously your most valuable asset at that time in life, you don't really have any assets. You might have a car, right? And you're probably living in a rented space, so you don't have a home. So your asset is your self. You've got enormous human potential at that point. So good disability insurance is really critical. So I think, the own stuff, the own occupation stuff probably would become available to you once you're actually in a residency or fellowship, and you can actually say, okay, I'm going to be an internist or I'm going to be a pediatrician. Then you can go to an insurance company and say, insure me as such. But even in med school, I suppose you could insure yourself as a general physician or something like that. Bruce, do hospital policies typically offer appropriate insurance for those individuals, or should they be looking outside of their benefit package?
Yeah, I think most hospitals that I've seen are doing a good job with those kinds of things, professional and general liability for everybody that's involved. Certainly, if there's a certain limitation in terms of how much income is going to be, provided, they could potentially get an additional policy to get up to certain levels. But I think it's usually a pretty good job that hospitals do.
Yeah. So, I mean, once you're employed by a hospital, now you're looking at residency. Medical schools probably don't offer much, if anything, in the way of disability insurance for their students. So you would probably kind of be on your own through medical school, but then as soon as you've got an occupation that you can point to, I would look for good quality disability insurance. Probably you'll go with your benefit package through the hospital, but read the fine print, I would say, huh?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
I'm thinking of how when young people hit college, right, they get inundated with these credit card applications, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that we experienced similar, and even now we do too, where we're kind of being courted by different financial planners and, come to this seminar at this restaurant, et cetera. And I'm curious, like, how do you make a decision around finding that person to trust?
Yeah, I mean, that's a super good question. Again, I guess, like if you're thinking of the medical profession, how do you find the right doctor, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes what you do is talk to the people that are in the medical facility. Like if you're a nurse and you're working with someone, it's like, hey, who would you go to? Who would you go to as the doctor, and maybe get some inside information there. Otherwise, you start looking at the dinner invitations and all of those kinds of things. I guess when you think about financial planning, I'm going to be biased because the certified financial planner designation we feel is the gold standard for the industry. The training and the different things that have happened to be able to be a certified financial planner. Even within the CFP ranks, there are many, many different kind of business models. We could get into that now or later, however you want to think about that. But Daren mentioned, I think, kind of the assets under management model that's prevalent. I am on a model where we just have flat fees. The assets under management model inherently has some conflicts of interest. As you think about if you inherited a bunch of money and you talk to your advisor and they said, hey, what should I do with this money? Should I pay off my mortgage or should I invest it? Well, that advisor is not going to get paid anything if you pay off your mortgage, but that potentially, could be the right decision. So flat fee advising is certainly something I guess I believe in, that gives the advisor no conflict of interest whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think that's the other, you can obviously talk to friends, see what they think in terms of who they are using. But again, I think the business model is super, super important.
Right.
It does not mean that the assets under management model is bad, but there are some inherent conflicts of interest. You can obviously still be very ethical with that model, but there are those things to think about.
So I would just throw in one comment about that is if you're young in your career and you're getting offered free dinners to talk about financial planning, I'd be super careful about that. I think the people that are throwing those are by definition people who are seeking clients. Okay. The financial planners you want to go to don't need more clients. You want to try and get in with them. So I would always start with a model of, did I pick this person or did they pick me? Okay. So I think it requires some baseline education. In addition to CFP, don't get those letters mixed up because there's 1,000 other designations out there, and you will see CFC and CFA and CF whatever and FC whatever. So I think it requires a little bit of baseline education as to what, certifications are excellent. I think the CFP designation is excellent. It's a certified financial planner designation. I investigated it enough to take a couple of introductory courses into that designation, and it is, I can tell you, not easy whatsoever without a background in finance. So, but I would say you should contact your financial planner, yourself proactively. You go seek them once you figure out who that person is in your local area. And that does require some baseline education. So don't be sold financial planning advice. You go purchase it yourself, is how I would put it. And always interview more than one, and ask similar questions so you can get a flavor of the differences in the answers. So Bruce, I want to backtrack a little bit and just dive into some physician financial issues. So when we're going through medical training, we've got a really unusual financial situation compared to your average person. Your average person comes out of school with nothing, basically a zero net worth, and they find a job and they start working and building their net worth. Physicians come into medical school and we immediately get pounded with a negative net worth. And that builds until we're pretty much done training. So throughout our 20s, we're living with a negative net worth. Once we finish specialty training and get the big salary, life changes a lot. So can you talk a little bit about the uniqueness of that and what young physicians should think about as they're having to live on massive amounts of debt?
Well, I think you have to, to kind of keep everything in context, the fact that you are having, these life changes, lots of debt, like you say. I think you want to start out thinking about, how do I do some basic budgeting? He can keep kind of taking care of the debt, obviously, what's required, but balancing that with starting to build some of the financial, kind of tools that you need, like creating that emergency fund so that you don't have to go further into debt if something happens unexpectedly with a car repair or something like that. So starting to kind of get some really basic building blocks started, emergency funds, and then thinking about how does that fit into kind of a discretionary and non-discretionary expenses, on how to really, kind of propel that funding and kind of propel you into the future in a positive way. And then thinking realistically that, income potential is going to grow, right? And so there may be some decisions that you kind of look at. It's like, I'm going to have more income next year, so I can take a little bit more of a, not saving approach right this minute on this particular issue if I've got some emergency funds. And so keeping everything, I think, in context, and just being aware of the debt and setting the emergency funds up, and then start thinking about the planning. And then how like you mentioned, how do you find the planner that's going to help you regardless of whether you have income or not, regardless of whether you have debt or not. A lot of times people focus on that assets amount. Do I have to have a lot of money to go see a planner? It's like, absolutely not. That should be on the simpler side of the whole conversation. I want to throw in the word taxes too, right? Because we all pay taxes every year. And it's a pretty important thing to kind of think about, whether we have debt, whether we have income, et cetera. And so trying to start out on the right track, thinking about the different issues from a tax perspective every year, I think is going to be pretty important too. And you can get yourself on the right track through lots of different tax, advantage type accounts and things. A lot of times your employer is going to have different things set up for you that you can take advantage of. That's where you might want to talk to some kind of an advisor or, planner to help you decide, hey, what's the best decision here? And one thing you sometimes hear from a CFP is that we don't give tax advice, which is totally untrue. We do tax planning all the time. Everything we talk about in terms of assets and your budgeting and your asset location, all those things absolutely has something to do with taxes. So I would be careful about talking to someone and have them tell you, oh, we don't do anything with taxes. Well, yeah, you do, because everything you talk about has to do with your tax return. Sure. And there can be some semantics there, but absolutely, in my case, I definitely talk about taxes and tax planning, and that's something that you need to do.
Yeah, I think that's sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to throw in there too, like that. So that kind of indicates where getting some advice even early on in your career. Obviously, while you're living on debt, you want to live as cheap as possible. Clearly, you want to, live in a rat hole and drive a crappy car and pay, get yourself a $5,000 car or less and live with it for a while. Just, let the average American lifestyle sit on you for a while so you can see, where you're at. And, folks going into huge debt don't need to compound that. You don't need to make the situation worse. It's already going to be bad enough just with your med school tuition. So live cheaply, I would say, is a crucial message for young folks in medicine. And then, I think the other thing you mentioned, Bruce, is when you do have a job, which for us would tend to indicate residency, right? While you're in residency, your hospital will likely offer a 401k, or if it's a nonprofit, a 403b. And read that through very carefully. You may want to start contributing to your retirement account at least up to the point of the match, right? Because even for residents, hospitals will throw you like free money if you just invest a little bit. So even though you've got this huge debt that you want to get rid of as soon as possible, it may be wise to start investing a little bit. And I think an advisor can really help with that.
Free money is a very good return.
Yeah, you can't beat it, right?
You always want to get the free money for sure. So
right. So all I got to do to get free money is store some of my money over here in this bucket, and you'll give me free money for doing that. It's an absolute no-brainer. So at least get the match.
Yeah. And you mentioned a really interesting word too when you said compound, right? So starting out early will serve, anyone in a really, really, really positive way. I mean, if you take someone 25 years old, and I believe it's like if you would contribute with some rate of interest, if you contribute $5,000 every year for 10 years, you're putting in $50,000. And then if you stopped contributing right then, and you had your friends starting at age 35 and put in the same $5,000 every single year up to age 65. So they put in 3 times. They put in 150,000. The person that started at 25 and only contributed 50 would have more money at 65. Right. Sometimes compounding is just kind of hard to believe the numbers, but it's true. And so starting out early, whether it's starting out early, like in residency or when you first kind of get out of residency, making those right decisions early can save you much grief later and help you propel yourself to a much more financially stable position later too, if you just start out early with the process.
Right. Well, yeah, because many of these financial equations are exponential equations, right? So time, Bruce, you make the point is it's huge. So for mid-career physicians who might be listening to us, think about helping your kids start to put some money away. Right. So give them an allowance. If you have a small business, let them work in your small business and be part of your 401k. Let them put away money before age 18 and they'll be millionaires almost certainly with however much you put in there if you do it early. So I mentioned, your biggest asset when you're a young physician in training is your future career. But also a huge asset is the length of time you've got because you're young still, hopefully still young and not going through med school in your 40s. We have a couple friends who did, but if you're the normal age in your 20s and you get your first job, then by all means, at least get the match and put some money away, a little bit of money away while you're focusing mainly on paying down your debt, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love it. I love it when I hear my clients when they're helping their young kids literally, get into a Roth IRA because they have some earned income.
Right.
And so they're dumping that in there at a young age and getting something started. Even if it's not the max, I mean, getting in whatever, it's going to be a very, very helpful start to their, to their finances.
Yeah. We did that with our girls when they started earning money. And, this is around age 16, babysitting money, total it up. Mom and dad, help them out, let them spend that, but then you can match their earned income in, as a gift into their Roth IRA. So tax free and let that thing grow for 60 years and it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I want to play the devil's advocate here a little bit, though. I'm going to just throw this out. So you go from this really kind of Spartan, debt-filled environment to finally earning a decent paycheck. Maybe, first year in practice, not training anymore. And you've gone years and years with postponing gratification, right? That's what you do all through your medical training, postponing gratification. And then you're like, well, there's this tendency to want to keep up with the Joneses. And yet, at the same time, Dave Ramsey says, eat rice and beans and rice all through residency and afterward for another 5 or 6 years, and then start having fun. Like, there's emotion to this too. How do you kind of balance all of this? And I'm the free spirit in this, Daren. You're the nerd, right? You're the DIY financial planning guy. Not that I spend all the time, but talk about this postponing gratification and finally earning more. Like, what do you tell yourself? What tips and tricks are there to kind of rein it in when you finally do get that big paycheck?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about a couple different things there, right? In terms of like maybe one of the two, like you say, is really focused on the finances and maybe one is not, in a couple sometimes. And that's normal. Like in our marriage, my wife lets me take the lead on our finances, and she doesn't like to necessarily talk about it that much. So I think you have to come to some communication and compromise some expectations. I mean, a practical thing that I see some people do is just having an agreement on how often they're going to talk about it. Maybe every quarter they have a short meeting. Maybe that's the 5 minutes, Daren. I don't know. But whatever can be agreed to, that can be a good expectation in that kind of shared goals approach, because the goals are probably pretty similar in terms of what you're trying to get to. Maybe you want to get to them a little differently if you want to spend more now and those kind of things, but have an agreement, have a kind of an expectation, compromise. Hey, we're going to talk about this. Maybe we talk about it once a year to start with. Let's just make this really simple so that we kind of stay together on it, because it does help when both partners, whether it's a marriage or a partnership, whatever it might be, have at least a working kind of nodding acquaintance with what's happening with the finances, right? Hey, I don't really want to talk about all that stuff with the different accounts, but hey, this is kind of the basic plan. And hey, if I get run over by that proverbial bus, here's what you need to do. You need to go call, so-and-so. They'll help you figure out what I've done if you can't follow and have good documentation, right? So each of you knows kind of where things are and what you can take a look at. I mean, your question as far as like you want to spend more and you've saved and you've kind of lived in that, whatever you call that, the rat hole. Now you want to do some spending. I mean, I think you can let yourself do that. I think it could go back to a little bit of the spending plan, sometimes called the budget. How much can we do? And maybe there's some money that you have in the budget that you just have for yourself and nobody questions it because that's just yours and you can do whatever you want. As long as you, again, have the expectations. I think the problem becomes when there's just kind of communication problems like, oh, I didn't think you were going to spend that much money on X. Well, yeah, that was my money. That's the way I like to spend it. I mean, I think what happens in marriages and life in general, you can spend anything you want pretty much on certain areas, but you can't spend as much as you want on all areas. It's a little bit like I have certain things that I spend more money on than other people would say is prudent, because that's an area that I really like and I value. Other people spend money in areas that I'm like, that is just a waste of money. So kind of honing in and understanding your own self in terms of how you're going to approach it. And then I think just communicating with your spouse or partner and saying, hey, what can we do that's going to be reasonable in kind of our spending plan going forward?
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Sue, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I appreciate the expectations piece. So that's pre-work, right? That's being proactive. And we're all about being proactive to kind of make life successful. So deciding up front. And so what comes to mind is an example of us early in our careers. Like, we kind of set a limit. If you're going to go spend more than $200, you kind of got to let the other person know, so that it's not a surprise on the balance sheet at the end of the month. Certainly paying off credit card debt, absolutely important, so that you're not throwing away money with the interest. And then I think the other piece that comes in there is the values piece, Bruce, that you just talked about. What I value is going to be different than what Daren values, but then just giving each other some grace around that, that if I have a hobby that's going to be this expensive, and don't judge me on it, let's talk about it in advance and work that out. We've always combined our finances too. And that's a choice, again, for couples that they make, right? But we've always been into one pot and one pool that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I think that's exactly right. So the discussion early in your career, early in your residency and so on, you'll have this giant anchor of the debt holding you back. And then on the other hand, you get the huge income when you go into practice. So a good kind of approach to that problem. If you're not in some form of, they've got these debt forgiveness programs now. So
yeah,
you want to be, if you're able to access one of those and you're detail oriented, you can make sure you get the 120 payments in and documented and so on, then that is a good approach to take for the debt, because you may have some of it forgiven. Or you could find a job that pays some of it off just as a signing bonus.
right.
And so that would be awesome. Obviously, don't take that signing bonus money and use it to upgrade your mortgage, right? You want to, or upsize your mortgage. You want to use it for the intended purpose, to get rid of the anchor so that you can then start to fly. So that's the early discussion, I think, is just weighing this huge anchor against the big income and just say, how much are we going to upgrade our lifestyle? Yeah, you're not going to want to live in a rat hole and drive a beater forever, but to do so for a while you're getting rid of the anchor, the white coat investor calls that live like a resident for a couple, 3 years to get rid of your debt. And I think that's good advice too. So Bruce, we're coming near to the end here. Before we go, I really want everybody listening to this to know a little bit about your company, New Retirement, and what you offer folks for free to start to take a look at, or even for a very low annual fee. You can get access to some pretty cool tools that I've been using, or Sue and I have been using now for about 3 years or more, and unbelievably helpful software. So please tell us about that.
Yeah, so New Retirement, and I believe by the time this recording is live, we will have changed our name.
Oh,
we're coming out with a new name here just shortly after this recording. So I'm going to just tell you the name right now is going to be Bolden. And so we're trying to really approach really the greater population, not just looking at people that are like 5 years from retirement. And so we want to be bold in our in our work and all those kind of things. So you can go to the website, and we have a planning tool, a planning platform software that you can use yourself. It's designed as a DIY tool. Our president designed it so that we're trying to reach really the millions of people so they become financially literate. That's really our mission. That's a free tool. You can also get the full suite of tools that I use as an advisor for $120 a year. That is going to have everything that you need to create a great plan. And then if you need classes, those are available to talk about how to use the software. There are classes on general financial topics just to learn and educate yourself. And then again, we have the advisor services at flat fees. If you want to have just a little bit of direction and reassurance, right? A lot of people want that second opinion. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like I sometimes am asked on a call as a beginning call, like, what value are you going to give me? As what do I need to get from you as an advisor? And I kind of go back to the medicine world, right? It's like, well, I feel really good and I don't feel like I need to go to the doctor, but my wife actually just made an appointment for me for a few months from now to go to the doctor. So it's like there's value in just making sure, right? There's a professional there. It's like, hey, did you realize there's something going on in there in that shoulder that you didn't tell us about?
Right.
And it's like, I didn't know that. So I think the approach DIY, we love it when our members can do things on a DIY basis, but we also love to be able to give them that second opinion and just reassurance that they're on the right track. And things change, right? We have tax rules that change every year. So just staying in touch with someone, even on a once a year call, can be valuable just to make sure that we're not missing something that's going on.
Awesome. Great advice, Bruce. I want to just emphasize to physicians the unbelievable value of New Retirement. The website is newretirement.com, and I presume that'll redirect to the new name website once your name changes. So newretirement.com, everybody listening to this needs to check it out. $10 a month, $120 a year for the full suite of tools. I promise you it is incredibly easy to use. And, start today to make a financial plan. You will just derive enormous value from spending a little time doing that. So, yeah.
And we'll have links in the show notes as well that'll help you kind of sort through some of what we've spoken about today. We'll have a list there for you.
Yeah, Bruce, and if you want to connect to Bruce too, right? You've got Bruce's info there.
Bruce, we are so grateful for your time today and your expertise and just kind of shining a light on a really tough topic that all physicians really need to buff up on, even us in retirement. So we're there. Thank you so much, Bruce. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Great,
thank you, Bruce. That was awesome.
Thank you for inviting me to talk with you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.